How's it going, guys? This is Al coming at you once again with a Week 1 Draftkings first look at the quarterbacks, a tiered look based on salary of the quarterbacks for Week 1, their matchups, who I like, who I don't like, who I'm looking at. Now, look, we're 27 days before Week 1 kicks off. The football's going to start really soon, so this is obviously a too soon first look, and things could definitely change with injuries to the quarterbacks, to injuries to their offensive weapons, to the guys that they can use, or their offensive lines before Week 1 gets here. But let's take a look at these because this is the video that you guys wanted. If you have a second before I get into this video, I need 3 things. You can pay me in 3 ways. This video is free to watch. 3 ways that you can pay me back for this. 1, like the video. 2, subscribe to this YouTube channel. And 3, you gotta ring the bell. Be a part of the notification gang. Ring that bell so that you know every time that I post a new video. So that's it for the announcement portion of the show. Let me go over here to the Draftkings and look at this. $5 million. A $5 million millionaire maker for Week 1. I don't mind this. It's the 2.5 million with $1 million to first that gets my goat, right? That I just can't deal with. But like 5 million, 20% of the prize pool for a promotional tournament. You guys know that my favorite payout is 10% of the whole prize pool to first, 10% of first place to 10th, and a flatter payout that pays like 18 to 20% of the whole prize pool. Obviously, it's Week 1. Obviously, this is meant to get people onto the site, to generate new customers. That's what the Millionaire Maker is for. I'm going to play the max entries in this tournament. I can't wait. I don't know how many you guys are going to play. Leave me a comment in the section down below. Let me know if you play the Millionaire Maker and how many lineups you're going to play. But let's take a look at the quarterbacks that we have for this week. Starting all the way at the top, from about 6,500 to 6,600 all the way up to the top, Tom Brady, the most expensive at 7,200. You'll notice that they've priced these guys down. Last year, I think the highest quarterback price was around 8,000 or 8,100, somewhere in that range. It was Deshaun Watson, and he, when he was on that ridiculous streak, when he couldn't be stopped and was averaging like 30 points a game, 25, 30 points a game, hitting that constantly. You look at his numbers from last year on his game log, and they were just ridiculous. 38 points, 35 points, 34 points. So he was doing that, and still, look where his salary was, right? It wasn't him. Look at that. Salary was way depressed. 64, 67, 62. And people were getting a ridiculous return on that salary. Tom Brady last year. I was wrong. It was not Deshaun Watson. 7,700, 76, 78, 77. So there we go. 8,083. It was Tom Brady. There were a couple other guys that were in that range early in the season. They've definitely depressed the quarterback pricing because you guys are all sharp. You know that you're not supposed to pay up for quarterbacks, so they have to tempt you to go after these guys and to go get them, right? Because why would you pay up for quarterback when the top guys, Tom Brady, Cam Newton, let's just X out Deshaun Watson because that was a short sample size and it was ridiculous. Somebody like Russ Wilson averaged 23 points. He had multiple touchdowns in all but what, 4 weeks last year? Just a ridiculous run by him. Look at this TD column right here. Touchdowns, 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 touchdowns. Many, 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 many touchdowns. What was that? 4 weeks that he did not have multiple touchdowns in a game. But let's focus on these top guys. Tom Brady up against Houston. This game has the highest total on the slate. We're going to notice that a lot of people are going to want to play him because there are values out there that we can get at other positions that are going to allow you, especially wide receiver, a couple of running backs that are in the 4,000s that are pretty cheap. And I'm sure that somebody's going to get injured and open up more salary relief at the running back position where we can project 15 to 25 touches at that position for 4,500 or less for Week 1. That's going to allow people to pay up for big-time skill position players. And if you can afford Hogan and you can afford Gronkowski because of the other players out there, you're going to have the money to pay for Tom Brady. I think he's going to be very popular for tournament stacks, not somebody I'm looking at for cash. Cam Newton, always a favorite of mine, definitely had a down year last year. Going up against Dallas, who should have trouble moving the ball, I think that Cam Newton has a big year this year and bouncing back. You see the wide variance, right? 20 fantasy points on the year he averaged. 28 in the playoffs against New Orleans, 14, 16, 31, 15, 20, 17, 35. Last year was very much a crapshoot for Cam Newton. He buoyed his points per game and kept his ceiling, his 30-point plus ceiling last year because of the fact that he just ran the ball more than ever. They were saying that he wasn't going to run the ball a lot. That didn't turn out to be fact. They wanted to try and keep him healthy. He exposed himself too much. He gets hit really hard. he needs to run to be effective. I think that he's going to have some players around him. They're going to make a difference. They drafted an outside wide receiver. DJ Moore is going to make a difference. They still have Funches. Brought back Greg Olsen from injury. I think that C-Mac is going to take a big step forward. Run CMC is going to take a big step forward this year. All of those things are going to help Cam Newton because all those guys can catch the ball, make things happen in space, make things happen after the catch, which is going to make the linebackers have to spread a little bit. You can't spy on Cam Newton as much as you could before when they didn't have all these weapons, and I think he's going to be fine. I think Drew Brees takes a bit of a step back. He took a bit of a step back last year. I think he takes a bit of a step back forward this year. If you look at his yards passing on the season, if you look at his touchdowns last year, very depressed from what they were in previous seasons. I think he bounces back. Tampa Bay really struggled with deep balls. Week 1 could be a spot to play Drew Brees, especially with the suspension of Mark Ingram. They may not be able to run the ball 40 times like they liked to a lot, 35, 40 times a game like they liked to last year. So I'm not sure that this is a situation where I want to invest as much. I mean, we're going to have Kamara because we're going to just have Kamara. But I want to invest in Drew Brees for tournaments. All these guys to me are tournament viable guys. All the 6,600 and higher. Roethlisberger against Cleveland. I think Cleveland is better on defense, but I do like Ben. Deshaun Watson is Deshaun Watson. Even if he takes a 20% regression this year, right? He still averages 21 fantasy points a game. If he regresses, which he will. He was way too efficient last year. Taking a quick look at his game logs, right? 4 touchdowns, 3 touchdowns, 5 touchdowns, 4 touchdowns. You either believe that he is the greatest quarterback of all time, better than Montana, better than Manning, better than Breeze, better than Brady, and he's going to continue posting 4 touchdowns a game, right, on average, or he's going to regress and look more maybe like Russ Wilson last year, who still had a tremendous year, 34 touchdowns, right? Although Deshaun Watson more of a running threat at this point in his career than Russ Wilson is at this point in his. Ben Roethlisberger, not somebody that I'm really going to take a bunch of. Again, road Roethlisberger, not something I want to go after. None of these guys are cash game quarterbacks for me. The next tier, starting with Kirk Cousins. Cousins, Rivers, Mariota, Wilson, Luck, Mahomes. You guys know how much I love Patrick Mahomes this year. He's a guy that I want in season long. He's somebody that I really want to attack. Even with the injuries to the Chargers, I'm not sure that I want to go after Pat Mahomes in week 1. I do want some of the players on his team. I think that this game is going to be extremely high scoring. I think he might throw for 300 yards in this game because of a necessity, because of how bad their defense is. It's going to pull his passing numbers along. San Diego should score a lot of points, which brings me to Phillip Rivers, who everybody always wants to ignore, right? Nobody really wants to roster Phil Rivers. I think he's priced at a point that makes him uncomfortable for cash, which means he's going to be low owned in tournaments. So that's something that I do want to focus on for him in week 1, especially with how much I like Keenan Allen in week 1 this year. I think losing Hunter Henry kind of stinks in terms of what we're going to get from him efficiency-wise around the goal line. He does rely on his tight ends a lot. Going to have to see who he's got around the goal line. But 28 touchdowns on the season, 4,500 yards, has a chance for 300-yard game as much as any other quarterback in the league on a game-by-game basis. They have to throw the ball to be effective. Melvin Gordon is a good running back, but is not efficient, does not run for a lot of yards per carry. They're going to lean on him, but he's also involved heavily in the passing game. So Phil Rivers, somebody that I'm looking at for tournaments. Andrew Luck might be one of the most underrated quarterbacks on the year because everybody's going to be afraid, yeah, but he's been hurt. I don't know. I want to wait and see. By the time you've waited and seen, the opportunity is gone. Andrew Luck is somebody that you're going to have to really just go get. Both in season long, he's too cheap in terms of his ADP, and you look at him in terms of where we're going to be. Right now, he's at 6,100. I like him as much, if not more, for week 1 than Russ Wilson, who is another player in this range that I think we need to target, both for cash and for tournaments. Indianapolis' defense is horrible, right? It's still bad, and Andrew Luck's offensive line is better. With the road grader that they drafted at the interior lineman who looked great last night, Luck is going to have time to throw, and when he has time to throw, he's extremely effective. So you take Andrew Luck, you know that they might have to just outscore people. They don't have a defense that's going to keep you to 17 points a game, which means that Cincinnati, who I think takes a big step forward in terms of their offense this year, with Joe Mixon in his second year, A.J. Green being A.J. Green, Tyler Eifert right now who's healthy, but they have Tyler Kroft behind him, John Ross who's running with the ones right now and takes the ceiling off of defense. And you saw them in preseason week 1 last night, splitting Joe Mixon out wide, and you saw what he can do when he gets the ball in his hands in space and against tacklers. Cincinnati should score points in this game. It's going to force Indy to score points in this game. Andrew Luck is somebody who right now is under the radar. By week 1, he might not be. He's just too cheap because people don't trust. Don't be one of those guys. Russ Wilson, who we've touched on a few times so far. Look, I don't care if he's at home. I don't care if he's on the road. Denver's defense is not the same defense that it was. Adam Levitan talked in his article on DK Playbook about how much DK has been aggressive. I don't like this cutting their names off. There we go. How much it's cutting, how much they're taking down salaries against really tough defenses to entice you. Kind of like in baseball when players play in Coors, their price goes up. When they play against Kershaw or Scherzer or a really tough pitcher, Chris Sale, the prices of the hitters goes down. They've kind of carried that over to fantasy football for DFS, and you've got a depressed price for Russ Wilson. I think he's going to be one of the highest owned quarterbacks on the slate, to be very honest with you. To me, he is very much tied to Doug Baldwin and his availability for week 1. He's a little bit dinged up right now, so let's see how he looks throughout the preseason. Monitor that injury. They definitely lost some talent. They got rid of P. Rich. They got rid of Jimmy Graham, but Russ Wilson's somebody who's going to be extremely popular in week 1 for all these reasons, right? Multiple touchdowns in pretty much every game last year except 4. Had the ability to run the ball in, had 3 rushing touchdowns on the season. That offense, as much as they want to run the ball, has to throw it to be effective. Mariota could be a bounce back, good tournament play because he does have 30-point ceiling. We talked about him. The next group, okay, is right down in here. Andy Dalton, Jimmy Garoppolo, Bortles, Alex Smith, Winston's out, and Dak Prescott. I don't want any part of Dak Prescott in week 1. If I lose because Dak Prescott goes off, so be it. It's just not somebody I'm going to be investing in. I'd rather invest in some of the players around him with their price points. We'll get to those at the wide receiver and running back videos, so look out for those. Alex Smith against Arizona, probably not going to have very much Alex Smith. He came off of a great year, and I like the weapons around him. Blake Bortles, never going to, I'm not a guy who's going to take Blake Bortles, but I will take a tight end against the Giants. As you guys know, the flow chart is definitely in effect. We already talked about Andy Dalton and how I think that offense is going to take a step forward. Nobody ever wants to roster Andy Dalton. I think he's going to make for a good tournament play in week 1. And then the cash game guys that I think are in play down here at 5,400. Tyrod Taylor, if you watched that week 1 game last night, the Browns don't look like the Browns of old on offense. Tyrod Taylor right now the starting quarterback. Until that changes, you're going to want to invest in the Browns quarterback because they're going to be cheap. And at 5,400, with the ability that he shows with his legs, with the progress that David Njoku is going to make this year, with the fact that Jarvis Landry is a very good wide receiver, no matter what Twitter wants to tell you, he is quite good. Josh Gordon not in preseason camp right now because I think he's there for whatever reason. I can inject my own philosophy why I think he's not there. I think he's personally not there because of the cameras. They're on the HBO Hard Knocks show. They don't want to deal with that, so he's practicing somewhere else. He'll be fine. Great talent there. Great weapons around them. Excellent running backs that can all catch the ball. I think Tyrod Taylor, to me, is my favorite. Right now where we're sitting, he is one of my favorite cash game looks at quarterback. There's him, there's Wilson, there's Luck. Those are the 3 guys right now this far out that I'm considering for cash because they open up so much everywhere else, and I can spend an extra 1,000 or an extra 1,500 versus the higher priced quarterbacks on somebody else at a skill position. I can upgrade a $5,000 running back to a $6,500 running back. I can upgrade a $3,000 tight end to a $4,500 tight end. I can upgrade a $6,000 wide receiver up to a $7,500 wide receiver, and the difference there is really palpable. You get guys that are going to get 10 and 12 and 13 targets at the 7,500 range that you don't really see at the $6,000 range. You might get 7, 8, 9 targets. So it's a big difference that you can afford if you're willing to pay down at quarterback. Tyrod Taylor, probably my favorite one in this range. Tannehill, probably not going to have much of him. Sam Bradford, interesting. Case Keenum against Seattle. As bad as Seattle's defense could be, Case Keenum has to be on your radar because of how we talk about this in season long, and it doesn't always translate. Well, if we like all the weapons around a quarterback, then we have to like the quarterback too. Looking down at Eli Manning for this one as well. The ADP on somebody is wrong, right? And I don't know who it is. Either Eli Manning's ADP is wrong, Odell Beckham, Saquon Barkley, Evan Ingram. One of those guys, of those four, their ADP is incorrect because not all of them are going to go and do the things that they're doing for the ADP that they're being drafted at. So either all of those skill position guys are going to go off, which means Eli Manning goes off, because if Beckham has 12 touchdowns and Evan Ingram has 8 and Saquon Barkley has 4 or 5 through the air, and that means Shepard probably has 3 or 4, you're talking about a 25 or a 30 touchdown year for Eli Manning overall. So either Eli Manning's ADP is wrong, or those guys aren't going to score as much as people are drafting them to score, and therefore their ADPs are just way too high. So you have to figure that one out. I don't want any part of him against the Jaguars, even though his price is so low at $4,700. I'd pay up a little bit and still be able to get something out of those guys. And Fitz in the dome, I think, is interesting at $5,000, but I don't like him as much as somebody like Tyrod Taylor. The one guy I did not mention, I realize now that we're at this point in the video, was Kirk Cousins in Minnesota up against San Francisco, somebody that I definitely think that you need to take a look at this year, both in season long and for week 1 on DraftKings, because they just have too many weapons that fit with what he does, right? He top 3 in efficiency to slot wide receivers over the last 3 seasons. He's got a fantastic slot wide receiver in Adam Thielen. His deep ball accuracy, top 3 in the league over the last 3 years on deep ball accuracy has been Kirk Cousins with Washington. Now he gets a guy in Stephon Diggs who had 40-something% of his overall fantasy points came from the deep ball last year, and he has one of the highest contested catch rates, so does Thielen, in the league, so he could just throw it deep to Thielen or to Stephon Diggs and have something happen there. Great efficiency to tight ends. He's got a great tight end in the red zone in Kyle Rudolph, and he can dump the ball off to Dalvin Cook as well out of the backfield. Kirk Cousins, somebody at $6,500 that I think we have to consider. Not somebody I'm going to be using in cash. Definitely going to be using him in tournaments. San Francisco's defense could be better. It can't be worse. But if it's just 10% better, it's still going to give up a ton of points to opposing quarterbacks. So that's going to do it for the week 1 QB look. Thank you guys very much for being here. If you got a second, please, again, like this video. Subscribe to the channel. Click that notifications bell to know when I have another video posted. Thank you guys for being here. Appreciate it. And look out for the running back, wide receiver, and tight end videos for week 1. Good luck to y'all in preseason, and we'll see you soon.